Hi, I'm Ross Bentley.
Hi, I'm Jeff Braun.
And this is
No dumb
questions, but terrible coordination.
It's been too long. We're out of sync. We're out of practice.
Yeah. We need to do more of these, apparently.
Right. With the questions that our people have sent in, which is really nice, send more. I think we're just keeping our head above water, maybe sinking a little bit. So we do need to do more.
I feel like we're sinking, but we're not drowning.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So I'm going to start off asking you a question, Jeff.
All right.
And this was a question that Mike McCarthy sent in. It said, if a tire gives its peak grip on tarmac at around 10 degrees slip angle, why do rally cars on tarmac exceed this, and in some cases practically drift around slow corners? And I think this is an interesting one because you've engineered everything from top fuel drag cars to Indy cars to NASCAR to sports cars, but you also did rallycross as well. So, yeah, I'm curious what your answer is going to be here.
Yeah, I'm actually curious what my answer is too. I know it works good because I've seen it work good in our GRC rallycross cars that we've run. Yes. So so some people that don't know about rallycross, global rallycross cars, they race on short tracks, usually under a mile, a circuit track, unlike a stage rally race, which is point to point. And most of them have a combination of tarmac sections, dirt or gravel sections, some even grass sections within the lap. So you transfer sometimes from some tarmac corners to some dirt corners to some jumps and things like that. And so it's the ultimate compromise from a setup standpoint. You can't just be good on, the tarmac sections. You'd be terrible in the dirt or bad over the jumps. So a lot of times in the dirt, you slide around the corners like you see, with stage rally cars, you're sliding around the corners. On the tarmac sections, we found that sliding less was better, more tidy was better. The cleaner the track was, the cleaner the tarmac was, the more you drove it like a GT car. It was just quicker. You didn't just burn up energy and slide around without moving forward and spinning the tires. You were better off to be more consistent and less sliding. Now, having said that, a lot of times the corners were tight, so you had to get the car turned quickly. And remember that those rallycross cars and rally cars have a handbrake to help you turn the car. So a lot of times where you would normally come into a corner and if you just turned in, because the grip isn't necessarily super great because there's some dirt on the track or whatever, you turn in, you'd get understeer. You pull the handbrake, slide it around, and about the time the back starts to come around, you nail the throttle and keep that kind of slide going and come out of the corner. So I don't think, Mike talks about 10 degrees of slip angle. We weren't really loading the tire. The grip between the tread and the track wasn't enough to actually develop a high slip angle. And remember, slip angle by definition is the angle difference between where the tires pointed and the wheels pointed. So we weren't developing much slip angle because I love to do, take things to their extreme. If you're on ice, you can't develop much slip angle. You slide the car, you develop a yaw angle, but you don't develop much slip angle. And I think maybe what's happening is you get confused with yaw angle of the car and slip angle. Yeah, the car slid out. The back's hung out. The car is yawing around its axis 10, 15, 20 or more degrees. But the tire isn't really slipping from the wheel more than a degree or two because there's just nothing for the tread to grip into to make it develop that slip angle. So my guess is that they're sliding with pretty low slip angles. They may only be sliding with a degree or two of slip angle, but 25 degrees of yaw angle. And I think the yaw angle helps get the car turned and reduces the understeer because you're not asking so much of the front. And they do that with the handbrake. That's not the normal handling of the car. It doesn't just come into a corner, you turn in, the back end snaps out. They're pulling that handbrake to make it do that, to like diamond off the corner and make the straightaways longer and get to full throttle quicker. I think that's how it works.
And Jeff, a couple of thoughts that come to mind, maybe a thought and a question. And, I coached a season or two with the Subaru rallycross team. And then, so I watched a lot of these guys turn these cars. And I think you touched on something there that is every time drivers are constantly compromising one thing for another. And, for example, on a road course, on a very fast corners, you don't need to change direction of the car very much. So you want the car kind of balanced and flat and on power going through the corner. Whereas if you're coming into a very tight hairpin where you've got to change direction really quickly, you give up some of that overall grip just to get the car to change direction. And I think the nature of rallycross courses where there are a lot of corners where you had to change direction quickly. And, so it may be a matter of forget grip. Let's just get this thing turned and pointed in the other direction so then I can accelerate again. So that was kind of the one thought that came to mind. But the other thing is how much of it do you think, because the races are so short, an entire race can last 6 minutes. And especially if you're driving part of the time through tarmac and part of the time through dirt and gravel, you're not putting a lot of heat in those tires. So maybe this is the case where you want to slide the tires more to generate more heat so that as even in the dirt, more heat in those tires actually help grip, right?
Yep,
so
for sure.
Some of it just be that, just trying to build more heat.
It sure could. I while you were mentioning that, I was thinking back to, we ran at Seattle, which was a GRC track inside of an oval track, inside of like a half-mile oval, basically.
Yep,
short track.
Monroe Speedway. Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the first part of the rallycross track was basically turn 1 and 2, or the first big end of the corner. And then you dove off in the middle of the back straight of the short track. You dove off into the infield and did your rallycross thing in the dirt part. And we were definitely faster, not sliding it around, not like a drifting car on the turn 1 and 2 of the short track. You drove that very tidy, very neat, without scrubbing a lot of speed. And I think, you generated some pretty good heat. And then when you dove off into the infield, you were on the dirt, kind of hard packed clay, and that helped you with the heat in the tires. It was interesting for me to see some of like Scott Speed, for instance. He was, back in the day when we were running it, he was one of the top guys. And everybody commented on how little he slid the cars, even in the dirt, how hard he worked to line the car up, keep it neat and tidy, not throw a lot of dirt around, not get it sideways. And he was quick that way. He was really quick and he was noted for that, man. Well, there's Scott Speed. He's driving it like he would a Formula One car, just brake, turn, get it turned, and, drive it like a road course. And he was quick that way. So, I think it has to do with a lot, like you said, heat in the tires, the kind of corner, how grippy it is. And the really good guys can feel that grip, and if they need to slide it, they'll slide it. If they don't, they won't. So I think it's more than slip angle. It's more, like you said, trajectory, things like that, about getting the thing pointed. If your car accelerates really good, but doesn't turn so good, well, just come into the corner, yank the handbrake, spin it around, and drive off and drag race off the corner. And I can tell you one thing: rallycross cars accelerate a lot better than they turn. That's for sure.
Yeah. And they're all wheel drive. Actually, you were in the lights. Were they all? Were they all
They
wheel
were.
drive? They were
They
rear
were
wheel
two-wheel
drive.
drive.
Yeah. But a lot of the GRC cars, the rallycross cars, and rally cars are all wheel drive cars. And
Right.
I can remember from my days of running Dirtfish Rally School and being around all these rally guys. And actually, I got to go for ride in the passenger seat with Marco Martin at Goodwood on the rally stage during the
Wow.
Goodwood festival. And Marco Martin was a world champion rallycross WRC guy. And I got to tell you, blasting down through this rally stage, blasting by trees that were like, massive trees. And I could have put my finger out the side window and touched them as we went by at 100 miles an hour. This thing, he was
crazy.
He was crazy, or is crazy for doing that. But the thing that got me was how neat and tidy he drove. And I remember him telling me, he says, way better to have the car pointing straight. And maybe back in the day when rally cars were all rear wheel drive cars and all that kind of stuff, maybe there was something to this sliding it sideways, kind of building a berm, and then kind of launching off of that. But, he told me, and I've had a lot of great rally drivers tell me that it's almost the less sideways you drive, the faster you go. So maybe it's maybe it's a driver style thing that comes from where they come from. I mean, Scott Speed did not come from that background. When I was coaching in GRC and rallycross, you had guys like Travis Pastrana and Ken Block, and Ken would Hoonigan, right? He would just drive sideways, and it was almost like for the fun of it, for the show of it, and other guys were just a little bit more neat and tidy, and sometimes won more often. So it's, I don't know. That's a really interesting question.
It's a good question. I just thought of so you've seen these drifting guys in the drifting competitions, and they do them a lot of times on short tracks, where they get sideways smoke pouring off the thing. I would take a late model stock car around that half-mile oval. I bet they beat those drifting guys. Yeah. I mean, it's not faster going sideways like that all the way around. And I know the drifting guys aren't trying to go faster. They're trying to put on a show and do all of that kind of thing. But
that's interesting. I just a month or so ago spent a day with 5 Formula Drift drivers.
Okay.
One of them that has won the championship and been the best and is known as one of the all-time greats in Formula Drift. And we talked about that, the balance between sideways for show and speed. And speed is important to them. They part of what they get judged on is how quick they are as well. And they need speed to be able to work when they're doing their the Paris competition. I call it the
pursuit
thing. They need speed to be able to make sure that they're close. So speed is part of it for them, and they also know that to do that you can't just go all sideways and turn every tire into just smoke. So that was an interesting conversation as well. Just how much of that. And by the way, those guys are amazing. How good they are. Like what they can do with a car blows my mind. I actually rode with a Formula Drift champion and in Long Beach, on the streets of Long Beach.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
During one of their events. And it's like, it was mind boggling how good they were, how good he was. So, yeah.
Yeah. Those guys that I've seen, I mean, you mentioned Long Beach. We go to Long Beach for the IMSA race, and the weekend before, and sometimes during the weekend, they have a little drift competition, which uses the last three corners of Long Beach.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you, the IMSA paddock clears out of working on their race cars on whatever it is Friday night, and goes to the fence and watches that because it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Now my only complaint is, I'm sorry, it shouldn't be judged. It should be who gets to the finish line first. That's
I
the
agree.
only part I don't like
agree.
about it. Yeah.
Well, okay,
well,
so maybe that answers Mike's question. I don't know, but there's some things to think about anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And we kind of maybe got a little off topic there, but that's fun. And Mike, thanks for sending that in because it got us thinking.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean,
and off topic is pretty much the point of this podcast, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So we did that
so
one.
We managed that one. Yeah.
All right.
So what's next?
Okay, so we got one here that probably won't get any controversy between the two of us. It was probably sent in to actually develop that. But anyway, Ryan sent in a question that says, when the performance of the car or driver isn't where you want it to be, how do you diagnose and determine if the fix is more the race engineer, parentheses, car setup, or the driver technique?
Well, that's an easy one. It's always the car's fault. It's always the engineer's fault.
No, it's the driver's fault.
No, it's the engineer's fault. Yeah.
Yeah. See, I knew we'd agree.
Yeah. We agree. Blame the other one. No. Yeah.
Right. Blame the other one. That's what I've made a career of that, and so have you. So it obviously works.
Yeah. Actually, I mean, it's a interesting question, and in that, but in some ways, it's a simple question. I think, like as a driver, if the car isn't doing what I want it to do, I adapt and I try to do everything I can. And then when I can't get the car to do what I want still, I talk to the engineer and say, hey, engineer, can you help me? And along the way, let's just say I can't get the car to turn in. So I trail brake a little bit more. I trail brake a little bit less. I turn the wheel a little quicker. I turn the wheel a little slower. I turn in a little later. I turn in a little earlier. I try those things. And if none of them fixes the problem, then I go to you, Jeff, and I say, can you help me here? And
that's
and I think what I would, and ideally what I would do is I'd say, Jeff, I can't get the car to turn in. This is what I've tried. I've tried trail braking more or less, turning later, earlier, later. This is all the things that I've tried, and I still can't get the car to turn in. What can you do to help me?
And and the key there is that you tried those things. So many drivers will go, oh, it doesn't turn in. And then they come back to the pits and go, it doesn't turn in. And then the engineer, and more often than not, the engineer is also the driver. But you take your helmet off, now you're engineer, right? You got to fix your own car. Now the engineer goes, okay, well, it doesn't turn in. What do I do? And you might have a list of 20 things that you could do, but you need more information. The key to it is that the driver, in your example, you right there, tried 6 different things. So me as the engineer goes, Ross, okay, good. It doesn't turn in. And what did you try anything that might give me a direction or a hint of what it is, what it could be? And you might say, I tried these 5-6 different things, but if I trail brake and hang on the brake longer, that seemed to kind of make it a little better. It didn't fix it, but that was kind of the best thing. Popping off the brake earlier, that made it actually worse. Hanging on the brake made it a little better. Turning in earlier just blew through the tire. So you've given me all of these ideas, and I go, wow, okay. Well, if he hung on the brake longer, what did that do? That kept the front tires loaded more, kept the load on the front tires, kept the load off the rear tires, and that helped him a little bit. Okay. You can't fix it completely that way, but maybe I can make the car do some more of that. I can keep the front loaded longer. I can keep the rear maybe a little lighter. I can, help make the car do the things that you tried to trick the car into doing, and we have a good direction. And that's I think the answer to the question is, it's probably engineer's fault and probably never the driver's fault. It's their job to work together and get it to the fix. Because anybody who says, "Oh, it understeers," and driver walks away, is only hurting themselves because they haven't worked with the engineer to make it better. And any engineer that says, "Wow, it's the driver's fault, he just got to drive it better," is hurting his chance of making his car go better, because he could work with the driver to give the driver what they need to solve the problem.
And I think one of the takeaways or ideas here is, I see a lot of drivers who maybe they've had this pounded in their head that you got to be consistent, you got to be consistent, you got to be consistent. And they are so consistent that they don't ever make big improvements because they're not willing to try some things. And, one of the things that I encourage drivers to do at a certain level, I mean, obviously in the beginning, if you can't be consistent and you try things, well, you don't know whether it's you being inconsistent or you actually doing something deliberately that made the thing better or worse. So you need to be able to be consistent. But then when you can be consistent with your driving, then you have to experiment. And I remember a number of years ago, I went to Australia to go coaching a driver in a Formula Ford. My good friend, Greg Woody, was running this Formula Ford down there. And it was the first time, I think, that I was coaching with him and his team. And as I went through working with the driver, it was like, "Hey, I want you to try this. I want you to try that. I want you to try this." And I remember him saying at the end of the day, it's like that I was approaching coaching the way he approached the setup, tuning the setup on the car. Sometimes you just got to try it. You got to try something. Right. And if it works, great. If it doesn't work, well, try something else. And even if it worked, great, understand why it worked. But I think, rather than, whose problem is it? It's both of your problems.
That's
exactly. And then go and experiment. Yeah. Right.
I think the direction, to me, the key takeaway here that you came up with is, and I see it so often, the driver not helping the engineer make it better. And again, the driver and the engineer could be the same guy. You can be driving around in your track day car and it's not doing what you want. But the minute you get back there, you have to now become the engineer, the crew chief, or the mechanic and try to fix it yourself. And the more information you can give yourself, even if you don't have a professional, race engineer to do the setup work for you, you still need to be able to think, okay, so it understeers, but why does it understeer and what maybe can I do to help it? So that whole driving around the problem and the pros, the best pros can turn that on and off. You'll hear a lot of race engineers saying, "Well, I don't want my driver driving around the problem. I want him to tell me what it is, what the problem is, so I can fix it." And I kind of disagree to that a little bit. I want my driver to try some things to help me understand the problem better, and then go drive it again the same way he did and tell me if it's better or worse. You can't always try to drive around the problem, but you have to actually say, "Okay, I drive like I want it to drive. It doesn't drive like I want it to drive. If I do this, this, and this, it drives better. Good. Now we go back out and we try it again. I drive it like I want it to drive. Oh, it's better now. Good." And then that skill, I think you'll back me up on this one, that skill of being able to drive differently to try to analyze a problem comes in tremendous help when a race starts and you can't come into a pits and diagnose the problem, look at data and try to make a change. You're just for however long your race is, if it's an IMSA race, a stint, and maybe the whole race. You start the 24 hours at Daytona, you're not changing springs and shocks and sway bars in the middle of the 24 hours at Daytona. You're stuck with that setup for a day. And if it's not perfect, you better know how to drive around it. And if during practice you had tried to adapt to different handling characteristics to help your engineer, now you can use those same techniques to drive around the problem that you're going to have to live with for the rest of the race.
And Jeff, I'm thinking about Ryan's question again, and I'm kind of going, like one of the things that I think is important, and you and I have talked about this many, many times, I think even on this podcast, is it's important that when the car understeers or oversteers, it does whatever it's going to do, whatever it's doing, the driver is able to identify what they are doing when it happens. So, the difference of I'm still on the brake, no, I'm off the brake completely, or I'm just releasing the brakes, or I'm just starting to turn the steering wheel, or the wheel's turned in, then it starts to do whatever it's doing. If the driver can identify that obviously helps you do your job to tune the car.
Tremendous.
But I think there's maybe also another little piece here, like, because I think about it as if I'm going through a corner and I'm, I guess it's sort of what would you call it? A transient stage where like I'm just starting to turn the wheel, or I'm just starting to come off the brake pedal. The car is doing something. And that seems like there's a good chance that you could fix that. But if I'm going through a corner and I'm holding the wheel, I'm not on the brakes, I'm just kind of maintenance throttle, the car is kind of set, and now the car is understeer or oversteering, there's not a lot that I can do with that. Like, there's that is what the car's got. And at which point I'm going to go, sorry, Jeff, I can't fix that. That's your problem.
Right.
I shouldn't say it's your problem, but it's our problem to work on together. But I'm going to rely on you. But if there are things like I'm in the middle of releasing the brakes, there's a gazillion different ways that I can release the brakes.
Exactly. And that brings me to another point that I've run into before is I've ended up saying to a driver, is it the driver's fault or not? Maybe not it's his fault, but I've said to drivers before, I said, look, I see how you're just, for instance, just popping off the brake on the entry to the corner. You just pop right off of it. And the front pops up, and then you get this big understeer. And I can say to him, I can try to help you with that, with the setup. But you'll go faster, and I don't have to compromise the setup as much if you will lift off the brake, have that nice braking trail like you always talk about, and come off the brake easier and hold the weight there a little longer and don't pop off of it. I can then give you a setup that'll be faster every other place. But if you are going to continue to pop off the brake like that into that corner, I can fix that, but you're going to go slower in all the other corners. So let's work together. You modify your driving. It lets me give you a better overall setup if you modify your driving a little bit, and we'll go faster together.
And that reminds me of the other one that similar, I guess, is that the classic, the car understeers going into the corner and oversteers on the exit. And that's because I go into the corner, get a little understeer, I crank the steering wheel, the front end slides and scrubs, finally hooks up, the car snaps sideways, and I get this big oversteer. And I come in and I go, Jeff, the thing's going to oversteer and kill me.
Right.
And yet you fixing the oversteer at the exit isn't going to help me any.
Nope. I've had drivers on ovals, especially. I've seen some wide eyes from some drivers. They're like, wow, man, it's just snaps at the exit. It snaps at the exit. It snaps at the exit. And I look at whatever my data and stuff, talk to him. And I'm like, okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take some wing out of it. We're going to lower the front and raise the rear and put stiffer rear springs in it. All things that make the car super loose. And he's right away worried about this thing's just going to snap oversteer. Sorry about that phone. He's just worried about that snap oversteer that's going to happen. And it ends up being a thing where what I'm doing is I'm solving the understeer so he doesn't get the snap oversteer. But the last thing he wants to do is hear me making it more oversteering. I mean, that would be horrible for him, because it would just end up being, he'd be like, I'm going to crash. He already thinks he's going to crash.
So I think what we've done is we've answered Ryan's question. And basically what I'm now going to say is it's the driver's fault. And you're going to say
it's the engineer's fault, most likely. I'll take the blame.
Yeah,
I'm going to take I'll take the blame.
Yeah. But I think, maybe the takeaway here is you got to work together, because it's probably both. But the key, I think, is figuring out where the problem starts and what you're doing, because then you can start to figure out whether it's possible to fix with your driving, or whether whether it's possible to fix with a setup. And
Right.
And then to your point you just made, I mean, is fixing that problem going to make another problem worse?
Right.
Which is maybe another
I figured
topic.
out what that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I figured out what that phone call was. So sorry about that. That was a driver calling to complain that his car's understeering too much.
Yeah, there you go.
I get 10 of those a day, so I'm sure that's what it was.
And you just answer the phone saying it's the engineer's fault.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Or wait a minute, or maybe the driver's fault. Yeah.
No, that
Okay.
was good. That's a good one by Ryan.
Good one. Yeah. Okay. So let's wrap this up. And Jeff, let's do another one next month. What do you say?
Yeah, well, let's do that. These are fun. We'll get our timing better right too at the start.
Yeah. That's one of these days we'll get that.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Hey, if you've got questions for us, if they're dumb, if they're smart, I don't care.
Right.
We'll tackle them. Right.
Right.
Yeah. Just let us know. You can send them to me or send them to Jeff. Social media, website, whatever. You know how to get a hold of us.
Everybody knows how to get a hold of us.
If you can't figure out how to get a hold of us, you've got more important things than your dumb question. How's that?
Exactly. Come to the track. I need somebody to come to the racetrack and ask me a question at the racetrack that we can put on the podcast. You two, we'll both be at many of the same racetracks for the next couple of months, and maybe somebody will come up and give us one, grab us and ask a question at the racetrack. Okay, so I'm going to go to the team that's your biggest competition in IMSA currently. Yeah. And maybe just go up to Bill and say, Bill, go over and ask Jeff, what setup are you running on your car? Oh, yeah, that would be good, because Bill Riley and I have been lying to each other for 30 years. So we'll just continue lying to each other like that. It's no problem.
Yeah,
we're good at that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks, Jeff. Thanks for everyone listening.
It was fun. Thanks, everybody. Have fun and go fast.
Go fast. Have fun.